Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode at Breath Hub. Welcome, Scott. We
Hi,
have
Nisha.
Scott
Thank you so much.
Robinson today as our guest.
Great. Thank you very
How
much
are
for
you
the
feeling
invitation.
today?
Great to be here. Really good. Thank you. Had a busy week, first week back at work. So it's good to be back in the swing of things.
Great. Nice to meet you. And
You
your
too.
business sounds really, really interesting. I believe you are
Yes,
targeting a very niche
yes,
market.
yes.
You
People are
call
always
yourself
curious about what I do.
the yoga teacher for the finance professionals. I would love to hear about that. So what's the difference between a plain yoga teacher and a yoga teacher like yourself who's helping finance professionals feel better or be better? Give us some more details. It sounds very interesting.
Sure. I started off as a lawyer, and then I moved into, well, always focusing on financial services, and then I moved into a regulatory role in the financial division within Deutsche Bank. And during that time, I developed an interest in yoga. Um, and then from there, I went on to become a yoga teacher. And then once you become a yoga teacher, or at least the experience I had was like you wanted to share that practice. So I started to offer classes to my colleagues, and then we were given the opportunity to offer classes to the wider organization. So my colleague, another colleague of mine, and myself, we run DB Yoga, and we offer yoga classes online and courses to the whole organization and globally too. So it's been a real journey, a really, really exciting journey. And I think understanding the pressures that people have working in finance is quite unique. Also, the language of finance, it's somewhat unique in terms of how people communicate with each other. I understand that perfectly. Um, and so I really understand what it means to work within the organizations and the pressures people face. But also at home as well. You know, there's a lot of people who have families and so forth, so they're busy with their time. And so, I've been really pleased to really focus on or create this niche where we're offering these specialized services to financial services professionals, as well as offering mindfulness
Yeah.
and in breathing classes.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're going to talk all about that. But before that, give us more details, especially for people who are not finance professionals, because I'm sure there are some people who are not in the finance world and listening to our
Mm.
podcast right now. What are their pressures and pressures they are facing? And also, you told something about the language they use. So I would love to
Yes,
learn more about that. So what's going on over there in the financial world that is keeping these
sure.
people really stressed and in pressure?
Mm. Yes. So I think every organization is unique, but I think generally speaking, across the industry, there are some common characteristics. So financial services organizations, their mantra is to generate profit and revenue. These transactions are complex, and also there's significant infrastructure that supports the business. And so across the board, people are under pressure to perform like any organization. But within financial services, the pressure can be quite intense because the margins can be significant, the transactions can be quite large. Often they're put together in a very short time frame. So people are under a lot of pressure to perform both on the sort of trading and the business side, but also the infrastructure to support these transactions in the businesses generally. And also, we've also seen across the board recently significant reduction or focus on costs. So people are doing more with less, and so that obviously creates more pressures for people. And so you're really feeling this sense of this intensity that occurs within these organizations. And so that's quite unique. And I think understanding that is important as a teacher, that when students come to class, you understand what their day has been like, and the issues that they face and what it means for them to come to class and what they're looking for in class. So I understand that really well. In terms of language, it's really interesting. The language of finance, it almost speaks. You can almost describe the language of finance in its own self. It talks about things like haircuts and liquidation value, and it has all this kind of terminology which you have to be very familiar with to understand what they're getting at. And so I kind of very eloquent in that speech as well. So I can kind of talk the language of finance and I can talk the language of banking. Um, and bringing those two together is quite interesting and actually encouraging my fellow bankers to come to class.
Yeah, brilliant. How it sounds for me is I think they're under a lot of pressure because they're taking a lot of responsibility. I mean, in the finance world, especially if you're managing funds or stuff, the one little mistake you make and you might lose a couple of million pounds. Maybe that's kind of
Yeah.
like that huge responsibility. That's what I hear from you. I think maybe that
Mm.
like too much weight on their shoulders, and whenever we feel like there is too much weight on our shoulders, we kind of like tend to get stressed, and then our bodies get stressed, stiff. So I understand that you're helping these people with yoga and also with maybe some wellness coaching. And I also
Mm.
hear that you work with them with breath work and breathing techniques, like specific techniques. Would you like to give us some more details around that, like how you know, you're working with
Sure.
classes and coaching, combining many different
Of
approaches?
course, of course. So there's a couple of things, Nidja. So first off, I trained in mindfulness meditation about 3 years ago, um, and I was keen to like when you do these trainings, you feel very empowered. So I wanted to bring that back into the organization, and I was just very fortunate that there was an established group already, and the teacher was looking to leave the organization, and I took that over, and then grew that, and then that became the bank's, the UK bank's de facto mindfulness channel, and then and then the pandemic hit, and then we moved all our classes online, and then suddenly we were increasing our classes to twice a week, and then we created our own unique format whereby we'd start with an introduction, a rival breathing practice of various types, a little short Dharma talk or little insights into mindfulness and meditation, and then I lead them through a guided meditation to finish the class. So that's been going now for almost 4 years, or 3.5 years now. So really, really, really enjoy that because I think the yoga is great, but what I'm seeing the consistent interest in and is actually the mindfulness and the meditation and the breathing and the space that it really gives people, that they know that when they're coming to this class, they can just drop into their body, feel good in their mind, and then leave the class feeling refreshed and then ready to get back into the day. And with a little bit of insight into mindfulness too. So I think it's a really powerful little thing that we've created within the organization. And then secondly, I'm a mental health first aider, so I've been able to offer that as part of some of the wellbeing sessions that we host as part of those initiatives.
Yeah, and how I see my team has written on the screen how important is breath work for yoga. So I need to ask that
Mm.
question. How important, I'm going to ask two questions. The first one is how important do you think breath work is, in yoga practices? And then the second, what are the results you're getting? Like how does how has been the, results you're getting, and do people like it? Like, how is the finance world with yoga and breath work and mindfulness right now?
Yeah, really interesting question. Thank you for asking. So I think, without breath, I guess from a conceptual perspective, obviously we all breathe, but without the breath in the yoga practice, it really becomes just another exercise routine. You see a lot of apps these days promoting yoga poses for physical fitness and so forth. That's all fine, but you have to ask yourself, is that really yoga? I think that the key to yoga is the breath. If you ask someone what yoga means to you, 50% or more people say, well, it's all about the breath, and that's the union, the link between the mind and the body and the spirit, which is one of the meanings of yoga. It's interesting enough, the word spiritus comes from the meaning word you may know this already, but it comes from the Greek word spiritus, which means to breathe. So the breath. So there's that key aspect that linking everything together with the breath and then allowing the mind to settle on the breath creates a form of meditation, which then brings a different quality to the practice, which really, at its highest end is all about elevating levels of consciousness, and then feeling much better in our body and our minds as a result.
Yeah, I love it. It's kind of like, yeah, breath is the bridge between the body and the
Mm.
mind and spirit, and it's pure spirits because I've been working with breath for a long time. It's the
Mm.
pathway to a spiritual practice. You either practice yoga poses like you said, as some fitness exercise, or you dive deep into those poses and really understand what yoga is all about by using your
Mm.
breath and make it a spiritual practice, a spiritual and mindfulness practice. That's the main difference. That's brilliant. I love it. And yeah, and coming to the results, and also there's a question: will wellness solutions be a bigger part of businesses that want to level up
Mm.
in all areas of life? That's another question my team is asking. Maybe some people who are watching are asking. So what's I see a huge difference between
Mm.
it's kind of like there's something happening in the world. I see a big difference in people's perceptions around wellness and spirituality before and after the pandemic. So I think you also have been realizing. So, like, how is the demand? Is it increasing? And do people like it, especially in the finance world? Were they able to
Mm.
make it a habit? Do you think it's going to be part of, mindfulness and wellness and yoga and breath work? Do you think it will be part of businesses in a bigger, level, or do you think it's growing right now? And what's happening in the
Mm.
finance world, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm seeing, at least within Deutsche Bank, is that, and this is what I sort of observe online, is that, since the pandemic, there's been a much bigger focus on well-being, and a prioritization of well-being. You're seeing more organization and resources dedicated to that. And I think that's certainly welcome. I think what's interesting when it comes to wellness and well-being within organizations is that, the topic isn't just necessarily focused on mental well-being or physical well-being. It's now becoming a topic which is almost like a strategic importance to organizations now. And so you're seeing topics like diversity and inclusion, um, and which is another very interesting area. So I think to answer your question, Nevsha, is that, yes, I'm certainly seeing more focus on that within the organization. In terms of the interest, I mean, in terms of my classes, I mean, they're very well attended, if I may say, on a regular basis. And I just see the results. I mean, just to give you a little idea, I'm also running a people strategy within the finance division and I've started introducing breath work to start classes, and people are naturally skeptical. What's this all about? Breath work. To most meetings, people sit down, they want to get on with the agenda and crack on and so forth. But actually having people just to arrive, connect with themselves with their breath, and then they start the agenda. Now I'm being asked, Scott, can you do this here? Can you do this there? I've seen the results. I was skeptical. Now I'm a big believer because it really helps me. So people just need to be kind of just um, they need to be curious, and I think people are these days. They're hearing more about breath work. They're hearing more about mindfulness and meditation, and they're open to that. So I expect that as a topic that people will be increasingly focused on, and be open to in the future.
And I think they need it more and more. I mean, all these viruses, even this year, pandemic is almost over. I still hear people, having COVID and this and that, but also there is all kinds of viruses like the flu virus, this and that. And on top of that, a lot of things, the economic crisis, what's going on in the
Mm.
world, the war in Russia and all that. So it's kind of like
Mm.
life isn't getting easier, it's
No,
getting much more
not at all.
complicated, and it's getting much more, there is this, stuff happening all around us. So I see that, people need breath work and meditation and regular wellness practices and mindfulness. The need is more than it was 10 years ago because life is getting
Mm.
intense. It's not just that, the financial world is intense, is that the financial world is getting more intense, and the other businesses are also getting, it's kind of like life is intense. Maybe that's why there is this huge need. And I love it because you say people are asking for more, because I also hear the opposite. I have done some surveys, and I have done some meetings with some companies, because we have some corporate packages as well. And we just did a meeting last week, and they told us something like, we start the yoga classes, 100 people show up, and then then the number decreases to 10 people, 15 people. What do you think the main reason is that people are joining your classes and the number isn't decreasing? Because that's a huge success, and that's your success, because it's not happening everywhere. It's not happening with every teacher. So what do you think is the formula of that success? Because that's a great success, that you start and then people keep on coming to your classes. That's, wow, it's brilliant.
Thank you, Nesha. Yes, it's interesting. I think, if I were to compare yoga attendance and mindfulness, I think there's always a initial burst of activity, and then inevitably the classes just go down and down, because I think it just requires regular attendance and effort and so forth. We've been offering these classes now for 3 years, and we've got some regulars. But as always, as a teacher, you would like more students. But we've been pleased to continue that. I think with the mindfulness, what I think really works is just, there's a personal aspect to that. There's a sense of, we always try and share something that how the practice relates to our own lives, and we're being honest and vulnerable about that. We're human too, and we need this stuff as well. And, and I think what's interesting is that, with mindfulness, and especially in the online world that we operate in, people can simply drop in and through a Skype or Teams or whatever session and feel good at their desk without having to actually go anywhere. They've transformed their day just by listening or breathing and meditating, and then they get on with their day again. Go, wow, I feel better, and then they haven't had to do much effort. It's always the effort thing. With yoga, it's a little bit more effort, but with mindfulness and breathing, there's no effort involved other than just turning up, and that can be just simply as a click of a button at your desk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that might be the case. And you're also teaching chair yoga and some methods they can practice on their own and in the office. That's, yeah. And I'm sure people love it more with those little, tips, I think, little touches. And do you offer like certain classes in between the day, or are they in the weekends, or do you offer classes, online? They're just, while they're sitting at their desks, and which gives you the best results?
Yeah, so I offer a variety of classes, less so now, but I was offering more, but still offer classes in person, and also online. So I think what's interesting, what I'm seeing is that the online classes continue to do well, in terms of the mindfulness sessions. Also, I've been introducing some somatic classes recently for yoga, and that's actually, consistently that works really well, because it's a very soothing class. There's not a lot of effort that's involved, and so I think the online classes where people can simply just at their desk or wherever they may be and take a short break, those classes, to me, seem to be the ones which are the most successful.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I thought so, because we did some surveys with our users at Breath Hub, and most of our users are, I mean, some of them probably are in the finance world, but most of our users are in, professional business people, and they're working in all kinds of different enterprises around the world. And the reason why they like Breath Hub, and the ones who use Breath Hub the most, they say because it's just, in their hands, and they use it at the office. Whenever, for example, they lose focus or they get too anxious before a meeting, an important meeting is about to start, they just take 2 minutes, 3 minutes to just dive in, calm down, get centered, and then they go into the meeting. So I think when you can literally integrate these practices, mindfulness practices, breath work, meditation into your life, then it makes sense. And then you start, seeing the difference. And my team also reminds me to ask you, would you have, tell us some, daily habits, daily recommendations for people who are working, in different enterprises and companies. And I'm going to come back to yogibanker.com. We know you have a website. It's a great website. And the name is amazing, Yogi Banker. So that's like the yogi for the finance world. But before that, what are the tips and recommendations you would like to give to people who are in that corporate environment?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind. Is that set aside some time in the morning to develop some form of well-being practice. It might be a simple movement practice. I mean, I've been exploring a bit of Qigong recently. That's very interesting. Or just simply sitting down with your breath, or using all these wonderful apps like Breath Hub and so forth to actually just find some quietness and stillness in your daily life. I think I wrote a blog post about this recently. Doing one thing at a time. I think we're so focused on multitasking, and increasingly people are showing that multitasking isn't that efficient. So really, when we're doing one thing at a time, then when the mind is focused, then it becomes more clear, experience more happiness and more control in your life. When we've got multiple things going on, that's when we start to lose control, and then our sense of well-being is affected. So doing one thing at a time and focusing on that, giving all your attention to that before moving on to your next task can be really helpful. And I've just noticed that in my own well-being, just doing one thing at a time and focusing on that is really, really helpful.
I love both recommendations. The first one, it makes such a difference if you start your day with just 5 minutes of breath work, meditation, or some mindfulness practice. It makes such a difference. I usually tell it to my students, if people knew the difference between starting your day, just taking 3 minutes, 5 minutes to get centered, connecting with your goals, vision, mission, and just jumping in your day. I think there's something with the sound now. I think everybody would do the same. And integrating it in our lives. I love both tips. And would you like to talk a little about Yogi Banker? And it's kind of like a project as well, and maybe give some. And maybe because we're going to be ending the live in a couple of minutes, maybe give us some tips as to finish.
Sure, absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Cool. So with Yogi Banker, so for me, it's really been started as a blog and has evolved into, I guess, a well-being site, and I'm looking to continue to evolve that. Basically it provides information regarding all the wellness and well-being practices I'm interested, from Ayurveda, acupuncture, breath work, nutrition, and so forth.
We lost you, Scott, the sound.
Let me just try again. 1 second.
Yeah, now it's better. Let's go on. Now okay, it's better. Cool. Yeah.
And then I've got a list of people who I've worked with or I could recommend, call them my tribe. And then, there's obviously information about me, my story, my journey, my interest in yoga and mindfulness. They'd like to take a class with me and the courses that I offer. They can find that further information there. I also have I guess I call it a journal. It's like a blog. I like to write about all sorts of different things. Sometimes it's a little bit, I just get really into the detail.
That's right.
Like things like your immune system and nutrition and the nature of thirst. And I get very into the science of these things. So that's in my journal as well. So I write on a regular basis. And if people want to subscribe, they can do that at my website and they'll receive a free copy of my e-guide, How to Start a Yoga Practice.
Lovely. Guys, www.yogibanker.com.
Great.
Very interesting name. Thank you very much, Scott. It was lovely chatting with you, and I myself will register to your newsletter. I'm also interested in, I read a lot of newsletters, and I'm interested in the scientific, approaches. And I love that you have a team of people you call your tribe, and you're also, referring them because, yeah, we all have different approaches and different perspectives, and I think we all need that help, that support, including you, me, all of us. It's all about supporting each other in this life journey of ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there something else you want to add to, and before we finish?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity to be on your panel, on your podcast. I'm really honored to have that opportunity to talk more about what I do, and also with well-being and breath work in finance. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott, and lovely to meet you and lovely to see you. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next week with another beautiful, wonderful guest of ours. Bye for now. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Nevsha. Namaste.
Bye, Scott.
Bye.
Namaste.